about the Tao of a nation. We're going to talk about the spirit of a nation, the spirit of a culture, and how people cohere together, how people have effective relationships, effective economies, that sort of stuff. What is said about that in the art of war. And according to the assessment in the art of war, I think we're going to see that we are metaphorically on fatal terrain in terms of our culture, our society, the things that we're seeing, the ways that we're headed, and stuff like that. So we're going to take a look at the assessments that are put forth in the art of war. Like it's not us saying, oh, let's look at these things that we think show doom and gloom. It's like he's giving us assessments saying these are the things you need to look at for a good state. Obviously, the opposite is bad, and here's how you do the assessments. So we're going to look at some of those assessments, look at the state of our culture and society, and unfortunately, we're going to be trying to show that we're on fatal terrain, that we're not going to get through this unless, hope beyond hope. We pull it together and enliven a Tao out of the fear of death, something like that.
That's an incredible point that Sun Tzu puts in here, because ultimately you get the fire out of somebody when they're backed into a corner, right? And so, like you're saying, if you allow that sense of retreat, it's almost a comfort to the enemy to know that there's an outlet, right? So if they're always looking
Mhm.
behind their shoulder and knowing that they can just scutter out whenever they feel okay to do so, then they don't have to put as much effort. And so that reminds me of something that Tony Robbins said. His mentality whenever he approaches something is to burn the boats,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So burn them behind you, and that way there's nothing. The only thing you can do is put in 100%. And
Hmm.
we've all experienced this in some aspect of our lives when we felt like we've been backed into a corner and we pulled something out of our rear end that we had no idea that we were capable of doing. It's like a mother that that pulls a car up from her motherly instincts to let her child come out. It's like, well, where did that strength come from? It's where did that resilience come from? That's it's almost it's beyond human, right? A lot of the cases. And so if you
Hmm.
can prevent your enemy from experiencing that feeling that they're backed into a corner, then they're less likely to exert the amount of energy necessary to overcome you, right?
Right.
Because and I've looked at that too, even in regards to let's say addiction in a case, right? Where a lot of times it takes for us to get into a feeling of incomprehensible demoralization, just that complete bottom, almost a feeling of death, like there's literally nothing else. We're hanging on by the skin of our teeth. That tension, that draw, like an arrow, like the bow being pulled back. Sometimes it just takes that last click, and that is being backed into a corner. Many of us never experience that. I'll end this mental thread here with this statement, in that it's easier for people to get off of drugs, like let's say heroin and alcohol, in the sense that the repercussions from these
Mm-hmm.
drugs are quite quick. So you
Right.
know quite quickly that you're backed into a corner, right? Like your face starts to peel off, or you shake, or whatever crazy byproduct is of you consuming that. But let's say something like smoking, the signs don't show up. And so by
Hmm.
the time you know you're cooked,
Right.
it's too late, because so there isn't necessarily the feeling of being backed into a corner with that specific substance. And
Right.
so many times it's to our benefit. The quicker we get backed into a corner in certain situations, the better it is, because we inherently know within us that we are capable of overcoming something when we're backed into a corner. Many of us
Hmm.
just don't realize that we're in those situations because we're not
Right.
enough to be backed into a corner. Um, and then kind of going off into the Tao aspect of this. Well, that's kind of the cohesive glue. If you don't have that level of cohesion, that societal melding, so to speak, that keeps everybody on a base level. If you don't have that structure, that foundation, um, it dissipates, and it dissipates quite quickly. And I don't think that many people have understand the necessity to really get back on the right track in this regard, because as a lot of the older generations are passing, uh, a lot of the newer generations that are coming in haven't been instilled with a lot of the character traits, or a lot of the means to really stoke the Tao. That hasn't necessarily, like a torch, it hasn't been passed down. And so it's like it's like playing a game of telephone, where it's like a living story that we have to, it's not something that just inevitably comes up. It's a flame that must be cultivated and catered. And I think that at this day and age, because of the extreme amount of convenience and short attention spans of the modern human, we're not necessarily capable of carrying the tower right now to the next generations.
Right, right. You said the towel hasn't been passed along, but to some degree we've also refused it, right?
Mm.
We've said, oh, we don't need that anymore because, the world's just different. Like people, everything's different, everything's changed. Old people didn't know what they were talking about. They were just dealing with something else. This is a new age. We're just doing something new, so we don't need all that old advice. But
All that jargon. Yeah.
right, again, but this is sort of we're going into this super old book and seeing, hey, actually, they're saying things that make sense and are directly relevant. So,